Hi everyone, I'm Molly and welcome to Goodie Gumdrops and welcome to this very special holiday edition of Goodie Gumdrops. The American Thanksgiving is just around the corner. It's this Thursday. So what's more American than apple pie? I don't know, baseball, nothing. So pies are a traditional dessert for Thanksgiving. So I'm going to be making an apple pie. And it's so much easier than you would think. So what I have here is 2 sticks of margarine to make the pie crust. And you can use like butter and vegetable shortening. Yeah, shortening. But why do that when they're already pre-mixed together as margarine? So I'm going to chop these 2 sticks of butter up and put them into my bowl. Okay, now that this margarine is all chopped up, to that I'm going to add 3 cups of flour, a half a cup of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, and some ice cold water, but that will be in just a minute. So to your bowl, add 3 cups of flour, one half cup of sugar. I want this pie crust to be nice and sweet and complement the beautiful apples. It's a little bit too much. Okay, half of a cup of sugar and a teaspoon of salt. This is just regular granulated table salt. So I'm going to give this a little mix. And now I'm going to blend it with my electric mixer. And I'm going to try and pulsate it by turning it on and off until the butter is broken down into like little pea-sized balls. Okay, now that this has been mixed up pretty well, I'm going to add some cold water. Now that this has gotten too thick for my mixing blades, I'm going to go in with my hands and knead it into 2 balls that I'm going to roll out into the crust. Make sure that you get all of the flour mixed in. Before I roll out my dough, I'm going to peel and slice these apples, and I will show you how to make the filling, the apple filling. Okay, I'm down to the last half apple. I've used about 12 small to medium apples in here. You can use 6 large apples, and you can use any kind of apple that you want. There are a lot of people who say you can only use Granny Delicious apples if you want your apple pie to taste good, but you can use any kind. I'm using red Gala apples, so they're kind of tart, kind of sweet, so I won't put as much sugar in as I would if I was using Granny Smith apples, because those are just very tart. So if you notice in the bowl here, I have large pieces and small pieces. You want mostly large pieces of apples, but you also want some small pieces to break down and turn into like more like a juice in there. One time when I was more of a novice at making apple pie, I made all the chunks very tiny, and I thought, well, I will have just like a very nice like juice, and the pieces will be very small. But it turned out I just had an applesauce pie when it was done. So you want to make sure that you use a lot of larger chunks of apple. And I don't have an apple peeler, so I just peeled and sliced these all by hand with a knife, making sure I got no seeds or anything in there. Okay, this is done, and now I'm going to add the rest of the flavoring in here. Sorry, I'm kind of stuttering or whatever. I'm going to add, so I have 1 cup of sugar I'm adding to the apples. And then I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon. It won't fit in there. And a teaspoon of nutmeg. I'm also going to add 1 tablespoon of flour. That will help the mixture all stick together. So I'm going to mix this around with my hands. Oops. A couple pieces got away. Now I'm going to set this off to the side while I roll out my pie crust. So I'm going to move this nice centerpiece out of the way, clean up my mess, and I will be back when I'm rolling out this crust. I have my dough out on my rolling sheet, and I've generously dusted it with flour and dusted my dough. So now I'm going to use this guideline to roll out a 9-inch crust. My bottom crust is rolled out, so I'm going to gently transfer it into my deep dish pie plate and press it against the bottom. I want to make sure I don't have any air bubbles. You don't need to grease the bottom of this. The vegetable oil in the dough will be greasy enough for it. It won't stick. So if I were making just a 1 crust pie crust and I was going to bake this off right now, I would poke some holes in here first so it wouldn't like puff up. If you don't do that, your crust will all rise in the center. You have to have air holes for it to escape, but because I'm not doing that, I'm making a 2-layer crust. I don't need to do that. So I'm going to set this off to the side. I'm not going to trim it just yet. I'm going to roll out my top crust and put everything together. So make sure you get your dough floured, your pin nice and floured. Oops. Just a little bit in the way there. And this top crust is done. Easy as pie, right? So now I'm going to take my apple. So I made the little apple piece, and I'm going to save this leftover crust to make turnovers or maybe like a strudel with it. So the last thing I'm going to do before I put this pie in the oven is get it a little wet with some water. And then I'm going to use just some white sugar. I've used this in a previous video, so I'm just going to sprinkle this over the top, and it'll give it like that nice like restaurant quality where you always see those larger chunks of sugar. And the most important thing to do before you put it in the oven is to poke holes into the top so it doesn't like bubble up and explode. There has to be air holes for the heat to escape out of the pie, so I'm just gonna poke a whole bunch of them in here, but not on my little apple there. That looks like enough. You can never have too many air holes. So now I'm going to bake this in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for 1 hour, and I will be back in a second to you, an hour, and probably an hour and a half to me, because I'm going to let it cool, and then I will cut it, and we will see how delicious this Thanksgiving pie is. Here is the finished apple pie, all cooled down and ready to slice. Kind of want to save the little apple piece, so I'm going to try and slice it at a spot where I won't break it. Oops. It looks delicious. And now for always the best part of this show, tasting it. It's really good. And you can see that the apple pieces really held together. The crust is nice and crispy, and it is a very delicious pie and a wonderful addition to your Thanksgiving table this holiday season. So if you did like this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and come back for more goodies every week. You'll see me in the next video. Bye!